Hi viewers, this is Salahuddin with lecture number 6, and today's lecture is the Union of England and Scotland. This lecture and this question, this topic is really important from exam point of view, and many time a question is asked in the paper about the Union of England and Scotland. So Union of Scotland and England. Both the two countries, they were independent and they were separated in all aspects from each other. They were politically different, they were culturally different, they were religiously different. So why this need was felt to make a union of England and Scotland? So we will talk about the union of the England and Scotland in detail, and we will try also to cover the topic in short time because the topic is quite lengthy. But we will try to talk about the major points of the union of the two countries, and what were the circumstances that led to the union of the two countries, and then reasons why the union took place. And then we will also talk about the struggle part of the union, how what struggle did by the people of the two countries that resulted in the union of both the countries. And then we will also talk about the provision when the union was concluded. We will also talk about the provision or the clauses of that union. Before moving going in detail of the union, Scotland and England, as we talked about in the start of the lecture, that both were different in all aspects. Many efforts were also made in the time of Cromwell, Charles I, Charles II, and even in James II, but those efforts were not succeeded in the complete union of the two countries. There were a number of issues, and they could not succeed in meeting the need of the union. So in this time, after the Glorious Revolution, but this time the efforts become fruitful, and in the union took place in 1707, 1707. So why the reasons of the union? What were the main reasons behind the union of England and Scotland? The first and important reason was the commercial interest of Scotland with British. Earlier, in the Act of Navigation, there were certain restrictions imposed on Scotland, that they could not do trade with the British colonies, and even the Scotland could not also trade with the other countries. So the first important reason was the commercial interest of the Scotland. And the second was the War of Spanish Succession and the fear of danger from Scotland. As we talked about the War of Spanish Succession, which is absolutely very important from the exam point of view. And in the War of Spanish Succession, because the War of Spanish Succession took place after the union of the both England and Scotland, but this union was not an accidental process. It was taking time process, and it started right from very fast, and still the process was struggling. But at last in 1707 it was concluded as a result of a treaty. Thus the War of Spanish Succession took place after the union of the two countries. So the fear of England from Scotland, because the Scottish were different. They were Presbyterian, and the English, they were Catholic, Anglican Catholic followers. So thus this fear was always there for England. They may not take the side of Jacobites, who were the supporter of James II, who was fled to France. So thus that fear for England was absolutely crucial and important to subdue that fear of uprising from this Scotland. That's why the union was the only option with England. So this was the second reason of the union. And the third was the restoration of the Jacobites with the help of Scotland was a great fear to England. Uh, if the union had not taken place, if the struggle had not made by the union, James II, who had already tried and many a times, even the son of James II, say James III, also took part in fighting against the Hanoverian dynasty, the William, Mary, and Anne, to come back to the throne of England. So this third peer was the restoration of Jacobites, means bringing back James II or the son of James II, James III to the throne of England was another reason behind the union of Scotland and England. So these three were the reasons behind the union of England and Scotland. The first one is the commercial interest of Scotland. Second was the War of Spanish Succession and the fear for England from the Scotland. And the third was the restoration of Jacobites, or bringing back Jacobites to the throne of England with the help of Scotland. So these three were the important reasons behind the union of the two countries. Then how the what struggles were made, or struggle for the union of Scotland and England. Finally, in this way, a committee was concluded, constituting members from both the countries with a number of 31 and 31 from each. So thus the members of both the countries, around 62, they sit and decided and concluded a treaty which was later on passed in 1707, and declare it as the Act of Union. Now coming to the provisions or the clauses of that treaty. The treaty was that was concluded, that was made. So what effective articles are there in this treaty, in the Act of Union? This part of the question is really important, and of course it carry weight from the exam point of view. So we will talk about the provisions of the treaty. The first provision of the treaty was the two country adopted a giant name of Great Britain, and we also talked in the previous video with the difference between Great Britain, England, United Kingdom. So we're not going in that detail. If you have interest, you must watch that video also, and try to watch these lectures in a kind of order, so that you get the idea properly. So the first clause in the treaty was they adopted a giant name and known as Great Britain. They had and they remain under the same crown, mean the crown that was ruling the English, the Hanoverian dynasty, Queen Mary, Queen Anne. And they had also constituted a single plague, and that plague is known as the Union of Jack. So this was the first clause in the treaty. The second was the second was there shall be one Parliament of Scotland and Scotland and England. So this one Parliament will include members from the Scotland as well as from England. And around 45 members were declared to be taken from the Scotland in the House of Commons, and 15 members from for the House of Lords for the Parliament. So this was the second important clause. And the third was Scotland recognized the Bill of Rights of 1688 and the Act of Settlement of 1701 and the succession of the Hanoverian dynasty. So these three important points were accepted by the Scottish. Number one, the Bill of Rights that we talked about, bringing William III, and the people of England had made a treaty with William that you are supposed to follow these points, then you will come to the throne and will rule us. That was the Bill of Rights. And then the Act of Settlement that we talked in the previous lecture. And then thirdly, the Hanoverian dynasty. The Hanoverian dynasty that starts from the Glorious Revolution, right, and until proceeding. So these points were also there in the third class. And the fourth was the Scottish were given full freedom of religious observations, means they are supposed to follow their own church and to follow their own faith, and that was the Presbyterian church. So they were also given freedom in that sense. And fifthly, the Scottish were allowed to have her own law courts and her own legal customs. So her domestic law courts and her legal customs, because they were highly tribes and they were highly people, so thus their legal courts and their legal customs, they would remain intact and under this Act of Union. And sixthly, Scotland was given the equal right of trading with the English colonies. Earlier, the Scottish had the Scottish were restricted under the Act of Navigation, and now they could do trade with the English colonies in the America, North America, and the African countries, even in the Asian countries. So thus, the Scottish could really trade with those with those colonies of England as well as with the foreign and with the other countries. And another important class, and the most important one, was the same weight measures were introduced, and both England and Scotland could use the same coin, same currency. So these all were the clauses of the Act of the Union. And now coming to the merits of the Act of the Union. What were the merits of the Act of Union? So the merits probably for both the countries, and probably the reservations of the both countries. So the first one is in the beginning, the Union was not so popular, and the Scottish spared the domination of the English and in the subjugation of the Presbyterian Church. So the first reservation came from the religious point of view, that their church might not be dominated by the English church. This was the first point. And second was uh, the union of England and Scotland might destroy the freedom of their country. So the Scottish feared that they might be dominated by the English in all aspects. So this was the second point. And the third was London being the capital of England, or the United Kingdom, would gain importance, and the other capital, Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, will lose its importance. And fourthly, the gulf of ill feelings between the two countries began to narrow down with the union of both the countries, and this union really become a boon for both the states. And the English people, they felt that the Scottish gained more rights than they deserved. So now we will talk about the advantages of the Union for Scotland, and then we will also talk about the advantages of Union for England. So first, talking about the advantages of the Union for the Scotland. Scotland become prosperous. This was the first point. How Scottish become prosperous, because the restriction imposed on the Scottish, they were removed. so thus they could trade with any country and with any colony. Thus, this trade resulted in the boon of the Scotland. And the second important advantage of the Union was the uh, conflicting chapter of the Anglo-Scottish history closed. So this union put an enmity of long lasted that was almost running for the past many decades. So this a kind of antagonistic uh, attitude of both the countries was closed for for once and all. And the third important merit for the Scotland was the Scotland lose not real but nominal independency. How not real but nominal independency? Because the Scottish church, law courts, and legal systems were not touched. So those matters pertaining to the religious, social, and political life, that was not touched, and the cultural aspects were also taken in regard. Thus, the society was given proper regard and veneration. Therefore, the nominal nominal independency was surely compromised, but not a real one. And real one was the society. And mm, the second important part of the question is the advantages of the Union Party England. So what were the advantages? The first one, England got political security. How England got political security? Scotland was a country located in the near in the quite proximity with English. So there could be a rise of revolt anytime, because the Scottish were different politically and religiously. Thus, the England had always fear in mind from the Scottish side, and the fear was that of the from the French might not take or the Scottish might not take the support of the French and supporting James II or James III, the Jacobites, and coming again to the throne. So the first one was that political security was given to England as a result of this act of union, because the Scotland, which could be a fear and could be a constant threat to the political security of England, was permanently removed, and it was resulted in the complete was a kind of the last nail on the coffin of the Jacobites are the James II and James III. And the third was the consummated the revolution settlement in the two countries. So the revolution settlement was accepted by both the Scottish and the English. And the English already had accepted that, but the Scottish also consummated it, and thus the Hanoverian dynasty was given complete order to rule the country. And the Scottish accepted the rule of the Hanoverian dynasty, means the William and Mary and Queen Anne and onward George 1, George 2, George 3, and George 4. And the third important advantage for the England was the Scottish intellect and character proved very useful for England. Uh, it was much due to the experience and capability of the Scottish people that the English made progress in political and social and cultural aspects. And the Scottish were really intelligent people. They were hilly and tribe people. Thus, they had kind of more character, and they were more intellectual in a sense that was really exploited, or one may say used by the English, and thus it proved in the collective success of both the countries. So the intellect and character of the Scottish really proved really helpful for the English. And the fourth important merit of the Union was the Scottish Highlanders proved good soldiers in the British Army. And the Scottish Highlanders, those were highly and tried people. They were tough, sturdy, and hard. They could face any kind of situation. They could bear any type of situation. Thus, they proved really uh, important role in the consolidation of the British colonies across the globe. So this important factor, this important reason that the Scottish people, Highlanders, they got the army and proved their role very beautiful and very distinctive way. So in conclusion, we can say that the Union was both boon by the two countries, Scotland and England. So this is all about the Union of Scotland and England. See you in the next lecture. So if there is any question, must ask in the comment question regarding the British history or the said lecture. So I shall be very thankful and will respond to your question. Thank you so much.